Friends from the media, good afternoon. Welcome to this press conference. The Chief Executive will first speak, and then the Chief Secretary for Administration will speak before answering questions. Chief Executive, good afternoon. Welcome to you all for coming here. I'm going to give you an update about the meetings I've had. Today, I had an online meeting with the leaders of Guangdong province. We have Mr. Li Xi, the party secretary of Guangdong province. Members are Wang Huizhong, mayor of Shenzhen, Mengfen Li, party secretary of Shenzhen, and Guangzhou party secretary, as well as Mr. Pang, Shenzhen mayor, and others. On the Hong Kong side, there were the FS, the CS4A, and 5 secretaries, as well as 1 permanent secretary. We had a discussion on the deepening of Hong Kong, Guangdong, Hong Kong, Shenzhen, and Hong Kong, Guangzhou, in furthering the development of the Greater Bay Area and relevant issues close to our hearts. We had a frank exchange. On this occasion, it was the first time in my capacity as the Chief Executive that I had a meeting with the leaders of Guangdong province. I thank municipalities of Guangdong and Shenzhen for their continuing support to the work of Hong Kong. In particular, their assistance in the 5th wave of the outbreak. They assisted us in combating the epidemic. They sent manpower on healthcare as well as testing to support Hong Kong. They also guarantee continuous adequate supply of materials and other items to Hong Kong. I thank them for their active and sound support. We had a fruitful meeting. We have reached an agreement on a number of fronts. First, in terms of cooperation between Hong Kong and Guangdong, there will be 13 cooperation task forces covering the Northern Metropolis, anti-epidemic, Nansha plan, INT, finance, commerce, youth, internship and employment, as well as studying, dispute resolution, shipping, and logistics. These are all important areas. On the Hong Kong side, we have dedicated secretaries as well as directors taking charge. Under this mechanism, different initiatives will be taken forward in order to reach a meaningful objective. The work will start soon. In relation to the task force relating to the Northern Metropolis, they will focus on the development of the metropolis as well as coordination and cooperation. The exchange will be strengthened so that there will be synergy. Secondly, the Hong Kong side proposed a reverse quarantine. That means for Hong Kong people going to the mainland, they would first go through quarantine in Hong Kong and then through a loophole management enter the mainland in order to meet the requirements under 7+3. Both sides, the 3 sides, all expressed support. There will be task forces set up to work out the details for implementation. We will follow the established procedure and submit application for approval. The task force of the Hong Kong side will be led by the CS4A. Thirdly, strengthening cooperation between Hong Kong and Nansha there will be the Nansha project. The project will have a high degree of opening for further cooperation. In relation to cooperation between Shenzhen and Hong Kong, after we have worked out the cooperation foundation, there will be 19 task forces set up covering innovation and technology, finance, commerce, youth employment, and startup, Tianhai, and a number of cooperation projects. Various task forces on the Hong Kong side will be led by secretaries as well as secretaries for departments. 5. In the deepening of Tianhai modern industry development, we will provide our support. There will be pilot schemes for further breakthroughs. Our government will continue to work on connectivity on hardware as well as software. We will seize upon all the opportunities posed by the Tianhai modern service industry development. In relation to Tianhai, we plan that within a very short time, there will be 18 initiatives announced. These are facilitating measures for ventures, startups, and cross-boundary development. We will also work on platforms that will facilitate cooperation. So these are the various agreements we have reached in the meeting today. And I will now defer to the CS4A in relation to the task force on reverse quarantine.
Thank you, Chief Executive. Now, as CE said just now, this morning's meeting, we had proposed the reverse quarantine topic for discussion, and we received the Guangdong government and Shenzhen government support. Now, this is a new arrangement because it has not been attempted before. There will be a lot of details that need ironing out and implemented. So both sides have agreed to set up a task force to look into the details. On the Hong Kong side, CE has appointed me to deal with the Hong Kong side, and Shenzhen officials and my counterparts will handle the Shenzhen side of things. So we will work with Secretary Bureau, Secretary for Security, and other colleagues to work on this issue. We will liaise with Shenzhen as soon as possible. So as soon as we receive news, we'll report back to you. Thank you. So we can take questions now. So use the microphone to raise questions, and you are limited to 2 questions per person, and please also identify your media outlet. The reporter in blue, RTHK. So I want to ask about the reverse quarantine. In today's discussion, when will it be implemented? Will you be using the loop facilities? So when Hong Kong residents use the facilities, do they have to comply with the mainland PCR test frequency? Do we have to comply with mainland standards? And there have also been reports saying that the government is looking into the quarantine, the vaccine pass, the vaccine passport. And so what is the progress on these talks? Now, regarding reverse quarantine, this is a new plan. So during our discussions, of course, you have to understand that the reverse quarantine, we hope that people who have completed the quarantine, they won't need to comply with the 7+3 quarantine requirements of the mainland. So they need to meet mainland standards. So just now, the Chief Secretary had already informed us that He will be working with his Shenzhen counterparts. They have a task force and they'll be looking into the details. So our goal is, if you have agreed on a venue, on a facility for quarantine, it will be a closed loop system, and you will enter Shenzhen through that location and fulfill the 7+3 requirement. So which venue will be chosen? We are considering the loop area as a trial, as a pilot facility. So we feel that the facilities there, the design was for quarantine use, and we feel that it's a good starting point. Now, as you all know, the purpose of reverse quarantine is to meet the mainland 7+3 quarantine requirements. So our discussion has to be unanimous. Both sides have to agree. And of course we want to move ASAP. I'm rather impatient myself, and CS is also very concerned. We had talks before, but it was formally proposed at the meeting this morning, and I have to thank the Shenzhen side and the Guangdong side. I have to thank them for their support. Regarding the vaccine passport, we are considering encouraging people to get vaccinated, especially for children. The vaccination data indicates, and we can see very clearly, that having vaccination helps prevent severe symptoms, and overall, it also provides overall protection. There is clear data indicating the advantages of vaccination. So I hope everybody can work with the government and encourage children to get vaccinated to ensure they receive the full benefits of vaccination, so that we can, if we can achieve a high vaccination rate, there will be more room for us to adjust our lives back to normal. The next question. Cable news. First, the reverse quarantine, if it's implemented, what will the daily quota be? You said that you'll start with the loop area. So which border control checkpoint will be used, and will mainland officials inspect the facilities? Now, the difficulty with the quarantine arrangement is that both sides, Hong Kong and China, have different standards. So we have the different CT values on both sides, and that is one difficulty. Now, just now you said there would be a task force regarding the northern metropolis. So we see that there are a lot of mainland netizens saying that New Territories Northeast, the Lintong residents, it's negatively affecting them. So will you respond to those queries and comments? Well, first of all, on the issue of reverse quarantine, you are aware that after completing reverse quarantine, we want to meet the 7+3 mainland requirement. So just now we talked about standards and implementation details and how we will implement a closed loop. This will be the responsibility of the dedicated task force. Both sides will have to consider the outbreak situation on both sides of the border. So for people who have completed the reverse quarantine, they don't need a further 7+3 quarantine requirement. So we need to reach a consensus. Our proposal has to meet the mainland 7+3 criteria. And second, I'm aware that Northern Metropolis planning, it involves a lot of consideration. A lot of infrastructure is affected. Residents there, residents nearby, they will be unsatisfied with some parts of the project, and we do have mitigation measures in place to relieve any negative factors that there might be. So regarding the planning of Northern Metropolis, we will consider all factors. We will develop it into a quality residential area, and we will support innovation technology. We also want to build, we also are looking into preservation of the ecosystem. So of course, we will apply remedial measures to minimize any negative impact they might have. We'll take 2 more questions. Let's see if we have English questions.
Thank you. A few questions from TMHK about the arrangement to have people quarantine in Hong Kong before crossing the border to the mainland. Is there any preliminary details you can share with us, like the quota, the duration, and does this arrangement mean that Hong Kong has already given up a quarantine-free arrangement with the mainland? And my second question is about the reopening the border with the rest of the world, because Hong Kong is trying to resume normal travel with the mainland, and mainland puts an emphasis on preventing imported cases. How does this? How can Hong Kong further reopen the border with the rest of the world under these circumstances? Thank you.
In this proposal of doing quarantine in Hong Kong for people who wish to travel to the mainland, so that after doing this quarantine in Hong Kong, they will be regarded as having fulfilled the 7+3 requirements of the mainland. The main purpose is to, first of all, alleviate the burden of hotels in the mainland and making use of the facilities in Hong Kong, so that there will be more opportunities of allowing quarantine facilities for the wishful travelers. The second goal of this proposal is to ensure that we will have a system to allow a regular flow of people from Hong Kong into Shenzhen, fulfilling the 7+3 quarantine requirement. How this is to be done, of course, will have to be examined by the task force that will be set up between both Hong Kong and Shenzhen. As the purpose is to allow the would-be travelers to satisfy the 7+3 quarantine requirement as a standard procedure in Shenzhen, we have to, of course, seek agreement regarding the actual details of the implementation of the proposal, so that those who have finished the quarantine requirements in Hong Kong will be regarded as fulfilling the 7+3 quarantine requirements in the mainland. The task force will, of course, look into every details, including how, after the quarantine requirement, they will be going from Hong Kong into mainland without contamination. These details will be worked out closely by the task force, and I'm sure that with the indication from the leaders of the government in the mainland, in Guangdong and Shenzhen, there will be a way to ensure that the details will be worked out and then be endorsed according to the normal procedure and then implemented. We will try to do this fast. As always, we want to ensure that action comes quickly. This proposal of doing quarantine in Hong Kong so as to fulfill the 7+3 requirement in Shenzhen is in no replacement of other measures that we always try to seek so as to allow more convenience in allowing people to travel from Hong Kong to the mainland. We are working on all possible options, and there has been good dialogue between Hong Kong and the mainland authorities. So we are looking at all options beside this new quarantine arrangement. As regards the connectivity with the world, is always my intention and the government intention to allow maximum connectivity with the world. That is why we have suspended the circuit breaker system regarding flights and also introduced the 3+4 red and yellow code, so as to allow more activities and allow more convenience for people who, according to the risk groups, need not be subject to very tight special arrangements. But one important thing I think we have to realize is that the number of infected cases in Hong Kong is high, an average between 8,000 to 10,000. This is not just a threat to the very old and the very young who do not have a high vaccination rate. This is posing a serious threat to the public hospital service. Because of the large number of infected cases, the number of people that needs to get into hospital is rising, and is rising fast. We have already cut public hospital service by 30%. So we need to control the number of infected cases so as to ensure that public service continue to provide service that is needed for society. It is a threat which we have to take into consideration seriously. The trend is still going up. We'll do our best so that the pace of is increasing will be reduced, and hopefully it will actually come down. That is why we have introduced various measures to try to lower the figure of infected cases. We also need the community to all work together so that the infected cases will come down, and as the number of cases come down, there will be more room for me to do extra things so as to ensure that the normal activities of Hong Kong and also visits to and out of Hong Kong can be given the maximum possibility.
今日記者會最後一個提問嘅。
Last question for today, the one in the front. I'm from Mingpao. I have two questions. First, you mentioned that with Guangdong and Guangzhou government, there will be a number of task forces. So on the mainland side, what level are these officials? Do we have the favorable condition for these task forces? Previously, there were also some counterparts that have been working with you. What's the difference now? In relation to plannings such as Northern Metropolis, well, do we have a bigger role to lead? And when it comes to cooperation projects, the interest of which side will take precedence? And what is the end game of the anti-epidemic efforts? Does it mean that if the vaccination rate reaches a certain high level, people can reasonably expect that there will be further relaxations of social distancing measures? And in relation to opening up border with the mainland, do we have to wait till the end of the 20th Party Congress? The 13 task forces set up with Guangdong province, as I said, that on the Hong Kong side, the officials in charge are secretaries for developments, secretaries for departments. And on the task forces set up on the Shenzhen side, Hong Kong officials will be secretaries for departments as well. And I reckon that on the mainland side, the officials will be of a similar level. In relation to our connections and cooperations with the mainland, it's on an ongoing basis. We have contact and liaison several days, every week. But with the epidemic, some of these contacts are done over the phone, via conference calls, or conferencing platforms. We have an effective and well-established mechanism in place for these connections. I had an online meeting with the Guangdong side. It may be a virtual meeting, but we have reached very fruitful and concrete results. So the format of the connection will not affect in any way our cooperation. Regarding our cooperation with the mainland, I'm sure that we share the same interests. The development of both sides and the Greater Bay Area are implemented with a view to furthering the interests of both sides. So we need to work together. Any problems are problems shared by both sides, and we will work to resolve them together. In relation to the cooperation mechanism with Guangdong, Shenzhen, and Guangzhou, as you can see that they all aim to maximize the benefits of all sides. And as I've said at the outset, I thank Guangdong province for their support to Hong Kong. And I can cite concrete examples. As you can see in the fifth wave of the epidemic, Guangdong province sent materials, testing personnel as well as medical personnel to help in Hong Kong. And they also ensure the supply of materials to Hong Kong as well. In relation to our policy, in relation to the epidemic, as I've explained on many occasions, I need to protect vulnerable groups and to ensure that mild cases will not turn into serious cases and serious cases will not turn into death. For some people, they might not suffer much after they have contracted COVID, but that is not always the case. If a child ends up in the ICU, that is a completely different scenario. So I have to make sure that proper protection is afforded to high-risk groups. And I also want to make sure that with these protection in place, public healthcare service should be protected. And at the same time, there will be maximum room allowed for the general public and most flexibility in relation to the connection with other parts of the world. I hope you understand. Thank you. That's the end of the press conference.